everybody. It's Chris Shubert with Cnsg, back for another episode of The Zoom, where we zoom in on thought leaders in the channel today. Today, my guest is Bruce Wirt, who has one of the longer titles that I deal with on this show, as Executive Vice President and Chief Business Development Officer at Telesystem. Bruce, welcome to The Zoom.
Thank you very much, Chris. Awesome to be here. And that title, here's the thing with that. The Chief Business Development Officer part is tough for people to understand what that actually means. So I usually stick the EVP out there as well, so people kind of know what I do. But really, I'm in charge at the executive level of sales, marketing, and product development at Telesystem.
So you're a sales guy.
Yeah.
Good to know. That's what what we love here. So tell us a little bit about Bruce Wirt. We'll kind of get into some of your fun part of your background a little bit later in today's call, but tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Telesystem.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've been in the industry just like you for about 20 years. Here's the funny thing. I wanted to go into broadcasting when I was younger, and I grew up in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So I was Harry Callis, Merrill Reese, like the big sports broadcasters were my idols. And in college, I started looking for my path, and I got a job at Comcast doing direct sales, figuring that I could parlay that into the sports broadcasting side of the business. I started making money, way too much money for a 19, 20-year-old kid to make. And I said, wow, I don't think I want to leave this. I think I want to stay on this track. So 20 years later, here I am. My two big stops where I spent 10 years as an executive at Net Carrier. We grew that company from a regional CLEC into a national VoIP provider and an aggregator. So I'm very proud of my time there. And in 2016, I was approached after Telesystem purchased what was formerly Line Systems. Mm-hmm. We were looking to develop a national channel and grow the company nationally, and they started talking, and it was a great chat, and I'm so glad to be here. It's been an awesome experience, and I just sometimes you have to pinch yourself to look back at the journey and see all the hard work that gets you from point A to point B.
Awesome. Well, within our community, we've seen some really big Telesystem successes this last year. In fact, we ended your fiscal year as your #1 master agent partner. We greatly appreciate the honor, and we love the success. However, I would say for a large section of our community, there's still a lot of folks that go, Telesystem? Who's that? Tell us a little bit about the company and what your major product set is.
Awesome. So, and one thing that people always make the mistake of is they'll add an S at the end of their name, and they'll end up on a website that's not ours. And I have to say, yeah, that's not us. So Telesystem it's an interesting story. So we grew out of a small cable company called Buckeye Broadband in the upper northwest part of Ohio. So
shocking.
So Buckeye Broadband is the MSO in northwestern Ohio. And in 1994, there was the idea that let's segment our commercial customers out. Let's start separating our commercial customers from residential, give them a better experience. And that idea started to take shape. Obviously, the Telecom Act of 96 got us into VoIP, and off we went. So Telesystem grew organically, building fiber, mostly in that northwestern part of Ohio, eventually into southeastern Michigan. And in the 2010s, there was a decision made that let's try to scale this. Let's see what we can do across the country. So looked at some acquisition targets. LSI or Line Systems, a lot of agents will know that name out of Philadelphia, was kind of our launching pad to a Type 2 network that could span the country. And from there, we just organically started adding points of presence. So right now we have just over 40 points of presence around the country for different types of things. So whether it's VoIP or internet access, we do DDoS mitigation, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we go on here as well. 97 NNI entry points around the country, which is, again, large. So I think sometimes people think of us as an aggregator, but the difference between us and a lot of your traditional aggregators are we have a large national network. And the organization size, you're talking about $1 billion plus organization that has the the money to grow the company and invest in the company. We're not reaching out to private equity or venture capital to do those things. So it's just a great story, an awesome place to be. I love the culture, and I'm not sure. I went off on a little bit of a trail, but maybe that answered your question. I'm not sure.
No, it really does. And it definitely kind of answers, one of my favorite questions is, why are you fired up to work there? You can definitely tell the passion behind everything that you're doing there at Telesystem.
Yeah.
Telesystem. Myself, no S at the end. But, you do bring up a great point. The aggregation market, which for Mavis that had been around here a long time, has really kind of replaced the traditional CLEC. The facilities-based CLEC as we knew it 10, 15 years ago is gone. Yep. And the aggregators have really taken on that spot. Now, you mentioned obviously the financial size of your company and breadth of services puts you in a different category than most of the aggregating carriers out there. But that being said, it's still a product line that a lot of people offer. Besides the financial backing of your company, what would you say are the biggest differentiators for Telesystem?
So, and I know you came from an aggregator before you were at Cnsg. So a lot of the aggregators just focus on the billing aspect of the aggregation. Right. So it's let me put all of your circuits essentially on one bill, and that's my value as a company.
Right.
So we're more of a technology aggregator. So I was talking actually to a customer this morning that did business with me elsewhere and said, why did you end up there and what's the biggest difference? And I said, really what we do is we go out and we leverage best of breed technology and we own the solution. So I think that's what makes us unique. We're not just putting things on a bill, but we're doing, and white glove is overused these days, but it's a white glove experience all the way through. It's a white glove deep dive into your technology. So in the agent channel, I'm sorry, I should have turned off my ringer. In the agent channel, it's a little tougher to do the deep dive, but what we encourage partners to do is, I have sales engineers that are positioned across the US. Get us involved in the applications because a lot of what ends up being sold is not what either the customer or the partner's first guess on that spreadsheet. So let us dive deep and come up with a solution that might be different from what they have today and leverage different components of technology. So if I had to sum it up, it's technology aggregation, so putting best of breed products out there, but owning the solution. And it's our people all the way through. We don't outsource our support overseas, which is big for a lot of customers. The person that you're getting on the phone is generally answering or trying to solve your problem.
Awesome. In terms of the product set that you have, we obviously have. Well, last time I'm going to use this word, or at least try to, traditional aggregation. Okay, sure. So we've got all of your connectivity options. You guys bring them back to your network, ride your backbone, et cetera. So your UC and your SD-WAN strategy, how do you address those with that product line?
That's a great question. And really, and that's why I don't think we're a traditional aggregator, because I'd say if it's just a pure circuit solution, the Nitels, the HyperCores, the SpectraTels, the people that do just that are great. And a lot of times they do specialize in low cost billing aggregation, for lack of a way of saying it. I think where we come into play is when there's multiple products on the table. So you mentioned SD-WAN. We partnered with Versa first out of the gate when we launched our SD-WAN strategy. And the idea was we wanted to separate ourselves by including as much of the functionality of Versa as we possibly could. So when Comcast, and I won't actually pick on any of those guys by name, when the big players launched Versa, they did it and they simplified the product. So they stripped out all the security, they stripped out all of the customization, and they tried to deliver something that was vanilla enough that you could do, round peg, round hole, jam it in. So what we did was we wanted to implement all of the security features. We wanted to see how that plays with other products that we offer. So how does it handle seamless voice failover? And we have both Cisco and Metaswitch in our voice core. How does it play with other firewall options? So we have Sophos that we've used for a long time. We're implementing Cisco Meraki as a firewall option. So those are all the things that come into play. And then there's the customer network to think about as well, and how the customer wants to manage that application. So it's all those components of SD-WAN that come into play. And I think when you're trying to do a simple solution or you're trying to do a price play, it's very hard to do that. You have to do a deeper dive when you do advanced SD-WAN. And I think we bring the expertise to the table to do that.
Now, one thing that caught my ear there was the Cisco Meraki being brought into play. In many cases, some vendors consider that its own SD-WAN solution. In fact, Cisco a lot of times will pair that as Meraki is one way to do it, but Tela is another. When you're doing your Meraki, does it actually combine with the Versa, or is it a separate solution?
Yeah, it's a separate solution. So, and really, that's a good evolutionary path you led me down. So when we did Versa is not a fit for everybody. And Versa is at the high end of the market. So it's not a price play solution. And what we found in the small and medium enterprise space is that Versa doesn't fit at all sometimes. It's just way out of the price range. So we went out and we tried to find a more of an SD-WAN light solution. And that's where we vetted out a bunch of different players, and Cisco Meraki really shined. And the thing that I love about Meraki is when Cisco purchased BroadSoft and they moved a lot of that BroadSoft functionality into that greater Cisco picture, and now we're doing things like leveraging WebEx as part of our UCasS platform. Love our relationship with Cisco. But what the Meraki solution enables us to do as a solution provider is we can do single IP or seamless failover on the SD-WAN solution using our Cisco UCasS platform. And in an over-the-top scenario, if somebody just had their own Meraki and maybe they had their own RingCentral or Nextiva, some other hosted VoIP play, it wouldn't seamlessly fail over because it's all about how that gear is built into the network. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So taking a look at the sweet spot, help me and my our audience here make sure that we understand exactly what you're looking for.
Sure.
So for Telesystem, obviously we get the idea of white glove. Yes, it's an overused term, but you guys actually have backed it up in every deal that you've done with us. Multi-location, no brainer. But multi-location with multiple products seems to be a big key, where you're doing not just the access, but access with UC and SD-WAN. Are there any other products that you would want to add into that mix as part of the Telesystem specialties?
So we're about to launch a managed security portfolio that really will be comprehensive, and it goes all the way down to the customer's private Wi-Fi network. So, and that's different vendors being involved based on what the customer's requirements are. So I think when people talk about managed security in the service provider space, not in the MSP space, service providers just want to sell it. They don't necessarily want to support it. So when we've been talking about and planning our launch for managed security for quite a while, there's 4 really separate components when you think about managed security. You have your cloud-based security, so things like DDoS mitigation and protecting intrusion into the network. So famously, I think one of the reasons that most of the master agents gravitated to us 3 or 4 years ago was our built-in always-on DDoS mitigation for our fiber circuits. So no matter where you get a circuit from us in the country, if it's connected back to the Telesystem core, you get always-on DDoS mitigation. But in this managed security portfolio we're doing, we realize that especially multi-location retail customers, which we do a good job with, smaller customers that don't have the need for a dedicated Ethernet or fiber connection, they still want DDoS protection. So we're going to launch an over-the-top DDoS product too that has a cloud firewall where you can proxy route traffic out and then back in through that cloud firewall appliance. So that's part one. Then you have the customer's premise and the security involved there. So gateways, things like that. Maybe Meraki's a component of that. You have the managed Wi-Fi, secure managed Wi-Fi solution. We're looking at a couple of different vendors there, including Juniper has an awesome Mist product. I don't know if you've seen that, but it allows customers to monetize different parts of that world. And then data encryption and security is a big topic these days with ransomware and hacks and all of the things that involve data breaches and the increasingly compliant worlds that we're going into. It's, when you're talking about hospitals or banks, it's not as simple as selling a simple solution or a price anymore. You have to be fully compliant and fit the system that they're in.
Well, nothing is simple in the channel anymore. I still hunger for those old
Right.
days selling the integrated T1 circuit, which back in the day seemed complex, but I think most of our audience would love to go back to, I just want to send a simple thing for $500 and be done. But on the other hand, though, we're now into much, much larger opportunities. As I look at the Telesystem story, obviously great attitude, strong relationship, great reputation for white glove service, multi-location services with multi-applications, including that included DDoS security type application. As we look at your competitors, obviously who the big boy competitors, the mega carriers that you compete with, and there's a couple of quality folks that are kind of your peers in the industry. But as you look at them and you look at the Telesystem itself, what do you do better than anybody else?
Yeah, I love that question because I get it all the time. So anytime you deal with a master agent like a Cnsg or partners of any kind across the country, it's always, what's the thing that you do better than anybody else out there? And
where do you win? Yeah, exactly.
There's the canned answers like, well, we have the best customer service, or, my circuit's better than your circuit, or my price is better than your price.
Yeah, don't play a telecom sales drinking game. You'll be dead within 10 minutes.
What we do better than anybody else is put it together. So, and that's not being corny. It's from the start to the finish, we put it together. So from the time that they engage with the channel manager, who's going to get versed on, or, informed on the opportunity. There's a sales engineering call for the application. It gets handed off to our project management team. There's a detailed discovery that happens, and then a phased deployment. So white glove, managed treatment all the way through. And every single product that we're selling is kind of owned by Telesystem, from the sense that we're managing the experience. It's not just, okay, we're getting this piece over there, we're leveraging that support team in total, and we're just throwing it on our bill as part of the overall picture. It is a solution that we are managing all the way through. So I think that's where our team does better than anybody else out there. For a company of our size, it's very tough to do that because it's hard to scale that model. And that's something that we've very carefully and strategically thought out. So,
and we'll come back to that here in just a second. That's actually got an idea for a question for you. So get ready. Before we do that, though, I want to touch on one of my favorite sections in the Zoom is our case study section.
Okay.
You guys have had some great success with us this year. Tell us a little bit about a case study about a customer that you made an impact with, and what our Cnsg partners can learn from that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to start. I have two that I want to talk about,
sure,
if you don't mind, because they're two different ones.
It's not a 2-hour show now, Bruce. No,
well, I'll be really quick. So we had a Cnsg partner. Actually, Randy called me and said, "I think this is the perfect application for you. It's the largest privately held privately held financial institution in the country." So they do all of the prime and subprime lending to the auto industry.
Oh boy.
They back a lot of the commercial credit cards that you get, not Visa, MasterCard type things, but when you go to a store and you're buying carpets and you want the 60-month interest-free financing. So these guys had very customized things that they needed to do. They had very aggressive asks on their toll-free inbound traffic. So they did tens of millions of minutes on the toll-free inbound, and they had to get to really strong fraction of a penny rates. So that was the first thing. They also wanted to control their own REST work, and route the traffic the way that they wanted to. So that was another component of it. You had thousands of SIP trunks spread out in different geographical regions that they wanted geographical redundancy and architecture that was built so that there was really no point of failure. And then an MPLS network that was moving to an SD-WAN network. So you talk about multi-location, talk about multi-product. And then Telesystem, with the size that we are, we had the buying power that was able to get them aggressively to the rates that they wanted. So all in total, that was $100,000 plus sale for that partner.
Cha-ching!
Yeah, the cool thing is that as we went through the competitive process and the customer was evaluating, companies just started to fall out of the mix because they couldn't do everything that this customer wanted. Today, I think a lot of customers look in the complex world that we live in, they want single source. And that's why the aggregators are popular, because it's all on one bill. But this customer wanted a single source to manage everything. And we were able to do that. So it was a cool win. It wasn't a long cycle. So we closed that sale soup to nuts in just under 5 months, I think, from the time that Randy called me. And yeah, it was done. And I think that's a great case study. It's on the large side, so it's not an everyday thing. And that's why I said I had another one if you want.
But I think one of the unique things, and we'll get into that in just a second, but one thing I want to point out for our audience here is it is unique to find someone that's an alternative provider. You know, you're not, and no disrespect to the big guys out there, but you know, you're not an AT&T, you're not a CenturyLink, right. You're not a Verizon. Normally, those mega carriers are where you're going to see that fit for being an all-in-one carrier. You're able to hit all those marks, but still do it with that alternative white glove mindset. And I'm sure that was critical to your ability to win over that $100,000 account. Tell us a little bit about the smaller one you got there.
So multi-location retail is another area that we really shine. So in that multi-location retail space, those guys are clamoring for one bill because they have broadband circuits everywhere. They have fiber where they can't get broadband. They got some T1s, and they just want one place to call for billing and support. So we, in a couple of these different verticals, and it's not really just one because we've done this multiple times in that retail world, but it's when the customer is looking for that aggregation, but they also want a full UCasS solution. They also want somebody to manage their gateways on site and some parts of their security, maybe SD-WAN, and put it together with 4G or backup potentially in some of these applications. So that is one of those instances where, from an experience standpoint, so a lot of people can maybe put everything together on the same bill, but when you own it, soup to nuts, you own the solution, you can phase it properly, you can do it where they're not getting billed for circuits that are deployed in March, and then the service isn't activated till October. You know, that's what gives our industry a bad name.
Right.
So it's putting that solution together, managing all the parts, and then phasing it appropriately. So the customer's happy at the end of the day, and they're not getting overbilled or potentially letting things drop along the way. So multi-location retail is a wheelhouse thing where everybody's got that in their customer mix. I think a lot of partners.
Well, thank God for it. If it wasn't for multi-location retail, I don't think SD-WAN would have taken off nearly as fast as it has. Sure. So 2 final questions before we have some fun.
Okay.
And this one's kind of my tough one for you. You know, you guys, you're $1 billion organization, which is not tiny. And a lot of companies that grow and scale and have that white glove approach, they hit kind of that apex area where either they grow too fast and then they have a period of bad service and they contract and then everyone gets angry at them. Then they get okay again, or they get bought or acquired. And then, well, let's just put it this way. There's never been a merger or acquisition that's ever went particularly well for the channel. How does Telesystem plan on avoiding that? You know, the pitfalls, and I know you can't look into a crystal ball and say no one's going to show up with a check for you one day, but how do you keep Telesystem?
So one of the reasons I'm here is John Martin, our CEO, is extremely big on culture and accountability. So his belief is if that's your central point and everything's built around culture and accountability, then you can scale as long as it's managed and done carefully. You can scale as big as you need to scale. And I think that, for me, it's one of the reasons drew me to Telesystem, and one of the reasons that makes me excited to get up and go to work every day. the people that work here care. They care about the logo on the shirt. They care about the partners that they support. They care about the customers that they support. And you feel it. When things go wrong, you feel it. And people generally will jump in, and it's a see it, own it, solve it, do it. It's not a punt the football to somebody else. It's not my job. So that I think is the key to scaling any organization. And that's also why, I mean, the tough reality is that there's sometimes there's wrong people on the bus, and you have to know when the wrong person's going to turn into a negativity vacuum or a cancer. And it's really, those are the tough parts of it. But it's about culture, and it's about keeping employees happy. The Southwest model, right?
Keep that culture, and you'll keep your company intact. And it says a lot for a company that can swallow a $100,000 deal from Cnsg and it not have a hiccup along the way. So you guys have done an amazing job for us.
Awesome.
All right. So last little business question. Where you mentioned you're all about the culture. We're all about the relationship. For the Cnsg partners listening to this or watching this, what's the best way for them to build a relationship with Telesystem? Who should they reach out to?
So the Cnsg channel manager is one of my best. It's Brian Bookman. Brian's actually based in the greater Philadelphia area, so our people are kind of scattered about. But Brian's out of Philly, and it kind of happened, I think, by accident how Brian got involved in Cnsg. I think we had turnover in a position down there. Brian grabbed it, and people started to like working with Brian. And Brian's won awards from some of the other masters and regional players for being their best channel manager. And he's very responsive. And, he's a guy that I think a lot of partners like to go out and have a beer with. It's like there's not a lot of people like that. And I think partners value somebody that they can have a good conversation with that's not going to try to sell them in that hour. It's just a conversation. How's the family? How's the kids? How do we do business together? What can I do for you? And Brian takes that mentality. He doesn't make it corny, and he's awesome. So reach out to Brian. Seth Gibbs is our sales manager. He also has the sales engineering team, so he floats around the country as well. I took Seth from my previous stop at Net Carriers. He's just been around me so long. And that's it.
Well, awesome. Well, I encourage our team. Like I said, we've had some great success. Number one with Telesystem for the last year, and want to see what we can do to blow those records away in 2020. Awesome. So let's have a little bit of fun here. I'll talk to you a little bit about your background, where you're based at. We're going to play a game where I'm going to ask you 3 questions to help me settle 3 bets.
Okay.
And depending on your answers here will be how this interview ends and whether or not we're friends here. Okay. All right. So first question is really easy. You're a Philly native, right?
Yeah.
Pats or Geno's?
Dude, I'm not a cheesesteak guy. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I don't care.
The correct answer is Geno's.
All right.
Now, my good friend Ali Naru, one of our top managing partners, the King, we all love him.
Yeah.
He believes that the Dallas Cowboys are the greatest football team of all time. I, on the other hand, am a big believer that the Philadelphia Eagles are the greatest football team of all time. Where do you stand on this debate, sir?
Well, who won the most recent Super Bowl between those two teams, right?
That would be the Eagles.
They have more, but the last Super Bowl was what, 95?
Yes, when they had a wonderful coach named Barry Switzer, and then they got rid of him. So therefore, this Oklahoma boy now hates the Cowboys. So we're 1-1 here. Okay, we've got one where didn't know which cheesesteak you loved. I'm hurt, but you're right. Philadelphia Eagles, greatest NFL football team of all time. But now we get down to your legacy. Now you have a background and a fandom. Everyone in the world knows I'm a rock and roll and comic book geek, but you've spent some time in loving the professional wrestling industry quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Randy and I have a huge disagreement. Randy Freeberg, our EVP of sales, Matt Hardy doesn't agree with me either. They're a big believer that Ric Flair is the greatest professional wrestler of all time with the biggest impact. Just the king. I agree with them. I agree. He's had his impact, but I'm hoping you'll agree with me here that without a doubt, the prayers, the vitamins, the 24-inch pythons. Hulk Hogan is actually the greatest wrestler of all time. So
listen,
the answer here, Bruce?
One of my best buddies out there is Jimmy Hart, who was Hulk Hogan's handler for 20 years or so. I am definitely a Hulk Hogan guy.
Oh, all right. 2 questions in. This interview is ending great. So, so with that, I will close this one up for all of our team members out there, and especially for Randy here. What you gonna do when Telesystem runs wild on you? See you all next time on the Zoom.
All right. Thanks, Chris.